If you look at a traditional map of Nepal, you see this landlocked nation dealing with, well, pretty severe infrastructure bottlenecks, a stagnant stock market, and an economy that just feels like it's grinding its gears.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
if you look at a financial map of the Nepalese people, you see this sprawling, highly connected global network powering, $14 billion economic engine.
Right. And the gap between those two maps, I mean, the physical reality within the borders versus the global reality of the diaspora, it's widening faster than ever before.
It really is. So welcome to this deep dive for the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast, your source for news, views, and insights for Nepalese worldwide. Today, we are unpacking the latest Nepali Diaspora Digest, covering the week of July 10th to the 17th, 2026.
Which is packed with some incredible data.
Oh, totally. Whether you're a first-generation immigrant sending remittances back home or, naturalized citizen keeping close tabs on your heritage, we're going to explore what happens when the very bedrock of a nation starts to shift.
Right, because the traditional ways of understanding how Nepal works, where its people go, how its institutions function, those old models are breaking down in real time.
Exactly. We are looking at massive changes in global migration patterns, a domestic economy that is completely paralyzed despite overflowing cash reserves, and the deep, silent struggles of everyday citizens who are operating without a safety net.
Let's start with the labor migration data, because it just blew my mind.
It's a huge shift.
For a generation, if a Nepalese worker went abroad, you just assumed they were going to the Gulf. But looking at the numbers from the first 11 months of this fiscal year, the map is forcefully pointing west.
Yeah, it is a historic pivot, truly. The sheer volume of people heading to Europe is staggering.
It caught me completely off guard.
The data shows 53,951 Nepalese workers got new labor approvals for 24 different European nations. Just a year ago, Europe made up about 8.69% of the outbound workforce.
Wow. And today, that number has surged to 14.7%. So while the Gulf does still hold the majority, the trend lines are aggressively moving away from West Asia. It's mostly driven by growing regional uncertainties there and, a desire for better long-term prospects.
Well, I was looking at the breakdown of the specific destinations, and it's not just the traditional Western European hubs. The list is fascinating.
It is. Romania is actually the undisputed standout right now.
Wait, really? Romania?
Yeah, over 24,000 workers went to Romania alone. And that's followed by Cyprus, Portugal, Malta, and Bulgaria. And within those numbers, there's a critical demographic shift. Almost 24% of the workers heading to Europe are women.
That is a much higher female participation rate than we traditionally see with labor migration to the Gulf, right?
Definitely. It speaks to a change in the sector's hiring. So you see more hospitality, caregiving, retail, and perhaps there's a perception of stronger legal protections in the European market. It fundamentally changes the nature of the migration.
Okay, let's unpack this change in nature, because I read a quote in the sources from a worker that just completely reframed this for me.
Oh, yeah. What did they say?
They said, once I secure a permanent residence card, I can bring my family over. It made me realize that if the Gulf was always treated like a rental agreement for labor, you go, you sweat, you come home, well, Europe is being viewed as a mortgage.
Right. It's an investment in permanence.
Exactly.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. For decades, the Nepalese diaspora has been defined by the pain of separation. Families endure years apart just to build a financial cushion. This shift to Europe, it signals a real desire to end that separation by relocating the family unit entirely.
Right, which means permanent, multi-generational Nepalese communities across Europe.
Precisely. But even as they look to put down permanent roots elsewhere, the sheer volume of cash flowing back to Kathmandu right now is shattering records.
It's insane. The central bank data shows remittances hit Rs 2.12 trillion. In U.S. dollars, that's $14.59 billion, which is an almost 40% jump from the previous year.
Yeah, a massive influx. And because of that, Nepal's foreign exchange reserves are sitting at an unprecedented $24.68 billion.
Wow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the arithmetic is sobering. There are roughly 3 million Nepalese living abroad right now.
Right.
About 2,230 young people leave the country every single day with work permits. The capital they wire home accounts for nearly a third of Nepal's entire GDP. The diaspora doesn't just support the economy. I mean, they are the economy.
They're funding the imports, stabilizing the currency, just keeping the state afloat, which makes the ongoing debate over the draft non-resident Nepali, or NRN, bill so urgent.
Oh, absolutely. There's so much friction over that old slogan, once a Nepali, always a Nepali.
Right. Critics are arguing that this needs actual legal weight when it comes to citizenship, voting, and property rights. And the urgency makes sense when you see data like the fact that 51% of Nepalese Americans now hold college degrees. We aren't just talking about exportable manual labor anymore.
No, not at all. How does Nepal update its policies for a diaspora that is highly educated and looking for permanent roots elsewhere? If over half of your American diaspora has higher education, they possess intellectual property, global networks, and investment capital.
Right, so a policy that only focuses on facilitating wire transfers is incredibly short-sighted.
Exactly. The challenge for Kathmandu is creating a legal and business environment that actually incentivizes those naturalized citizens to bring their expertise and their businesses back to the homeland.
But that brings us to a massive roadblock. Let's say a highly successful Nepalese entrepreneur in the UK or the US wants to invest back home.
Okay.
They look at the domestic economy, and despite those massive foreign exchange reserves we just talked about, everything on the ground seems entirely frozen.
Yeah, there's a jarring disconnect there.
The central bank is projecting 7% economic growth based on that remittance cash, but the reality is completely sideways.
Right. The money is essentially paralyzed within the banking system. To understand why, you just have to look at the Nepal Stock Exchange, the NEPSE index. It has been grinding sideways, just hovering around the 2,576 mark.
For someone who doesn't track the NEPSE daily, what does grinding sideways actually indicate about the broader economy?
Well, it basically means stagnation and a total lack of confidence. I mean, the banks are awash in liquidity. They have the remittance cash to lend.
But nobody wants it.
Business credit is incredibly sluggish. Local investors and business owners are terrified of the constant political turbulence. They don't know what the regulatory environment will look like in 6 months, so they aren't borrowing money to build factories or hire people.
They're just sitting on their hands.
Exactly.
And while businesses sit on their hands, the everyday cost of living is just punishing the people who aren't getting those big remittance checks. Consumer inflation has spiked to 5.22%.
Yeah, driven largely by the surging costs of food and basic services. That is almost double the inflation rate from a year ago.
So the headline numbers, the $24 billion in reserves, it looks like an economic miracle on paper. But for the average citizen in Kathmandu buying groceries, the reality is a shrinking wallet and stagnant wages.
And nothing visualizes the stuck potential better than the country's infrastructure.
Oh, specifically the aviation sector. Nepal spent over $60 billion building 2 gleaming new international airports in Pokhara and Pyrahawa. And yet they are virtually empty of scheduled international flights.
Yeah, it's a massive issue.
It sounds like building a multi-million-dollar driveway, but your neighbor refuses to let you use the curb cut to get to the street. Why is 90% of all international traffic still forced to squeeze through the heavily congested Simara corridor into Kathmandu?
Well, the airspace geopolitics with India is the exact bottleneck here. India has historically resisted opening new air entry routes, citing pretty severe security sensitivities regarding its airbase in Gorakhpur. Because India controls the airspace just across the border, aircraft trying to land at the new Pyrahawa airport have to make a 300-kilometer detour, and flights to Pokhara have to detour up to 185 kilometers.
So it's just a simple issue of fuel math. Airlines operate on razor-thin margins. If they have to fly an extra 300 kilometers just to bypass restricted airspace, the route becomes commercially unviable.
Exactly. They lose money on every single flight.
That's so frustrating.
But there is a ray of hope on this front. After nearly a decade of deadlock, Nepal and India are resuming bilateral talks in August to explicitly discuss new air entry points at Janakpur, Pyrahawa, and Nepalganj.
If they could finally resolve this, the impact for the diaspora is huge. I mean, shorter flights, cheaper fares, and finally bypassing the absolute chaos of landing in Kathmandu just to travel to the provinces.
Absolutely. And we're already seeing some movement. Fly Dubai has announced they are launching daily flights between Pokhara and Dubai starting September 23rd.
Wow, that is a massive breakthrough.
It really is, not just for Gulf workers who live in the Gandaki province, but for unlocking the region's tourism potential.
It's a great win. But, we can't look at these macro-level structural issues like stagnant markets and infrastructure bottlenecks without looking at the human toll they take on the ground.
Yeah, economic struggles aren't just about stagnant stocks.
No, they have a heartbreaking human face. When the formal economy freezes up, people are forced into the informal economy. And the sources detail a really tragic story this week regarding a 25-year-old rideshare driver from Mugu named Ganesh Nepali.
The details are just devastating. He had purchased a motorcycle on a loan to work in Kathmandu and support his ailing mother.
Right.
After receiving a RS-1000 traffic fine and having his motorcycle clamped, the financial pressure apparently just became insurmountable. He set himself on fire and later died from his injuries.
It's a profound tragedy. And it exposes the absolute precarity of the gig economy. I think from the outside, the smartphone-driven rideshare economy looks like progress and modernization. But the math for the workers is brutal.
It really is. The economics are crushing them from multiple sides. Over the last 2 years, intense algorithmic price wars between the different apps have driven rideshare fares down by roughly 60%.
That's a massive drop.
Yeah, but the platforms are still extracting their 10 to 15% commissions off those slashed fares.
Add to that the government proposing new taxes on the sector and traffic signs that can hit REs 10,000 or 15,000 on a motorcycle that might have only cost 50,000. A single fine can literally put a worker underwater on their loan.
Exactly. These workers have zero formal labor protections, no minimum wage guarantees, and no social safety net. They are absorbing 100% of the risk of this modern urban economy, while the platforms absorb all the profit.
And there is a dark irony here for you listening. Remittances from the diaspora helped build this smartphone-driven urban economy. The capital that fueled the smartphone adoption and the urban infrastructure that makes these apps possible in Kathmandu largely came from outside.
Yet the tens of thousands of Nepalese workers driving and delivering within that system are incredibly vulnerable. And honestly, that vulnerability, it connects directly to the physical vulnerability of the whole nation right now, as the monsoon settles into its deadliest stretch.
The numbers coming out of the Disaster Management Authority are staggering. In just the past 3 months, disaster-related incidents, landslides, floods, they've claimed 163 lives.
Awful.
On just one single day, July 14th, there were 73 separate disaster incidents recorded across the country.
The sources specifically mentioned the tragic deaths of Mandir Saud and Lal Bahadur Saud, who were buried by a landslide in Calicut. These events really ground the statistics in reality.
They do. For the diaspora, this season brings an underlying constant dread. It's that familiar summer anxiety, making frantic WhatsApp calls to ensure the house on the hillside or the road connecting the village hasn't washed away.
Yeah, that anxiety is very real.
And when citizens feel that vulnerable, whether economically or physically, they naturally demand aggressive action from their leaders. Which brings us to the fascinating tension happening in Kathmandu right now regarding corruption. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right, the Balen Shah government has been running this wildly popular anti-corruption crusade.
Exactly.
As part of this, they established the Property Investigation Commission, chaired by Rajendra Kumar Bhandari. The mandate was to aggressively chase down hidden, illicit wealth accumulated by politicians, bureaucrats, and officials between 2005 and 2026.
And the public was entirely behind it. But the Supreme Court just stepped in and issued a sweeping interim order, freezing the commission entirely.
Right.
Before they were shut down, they had already gathered 13,660 asset declarations. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. If the public wants a cleanup, and the diaspora is cheering for a corruption-free Nepal, shouldn't the government just bulldoze through these technicalities and get it done?
This raises an important question, but it's a profound test of the institutions.
Yeah.
The petitioners who halted the commission brought a very specific constitutional argument.
Okay, we'll live it.
They argued that this new commission trampled on individual privacy rights and, crucially, that it stepped on the toes of the CIA, the Commission for the Investigation of Abuse of Authority.
Which is the established constitutional anti-graft body.
Exactly. So the argument is that a crackdown that ignores the Constitution isn't reform, it's arbitrary power. The rule of law must apply even to popular initiatives.
It's the tension between wanting immediate justice and meeting institutional due process.
Yes, and to highlight this tension, we can see the judiciary enforcing that due process on both sides of the political spectrum. While the Supreme Court froze the Balen Shah government's commission, it also dismissed a habeas corpus petition from Bishnu Prasad Podel, the CPN-UML vice chair.
So he remains in jail on a money laundering probe.
Exactly. One arm of the state is pushing hard, and another is demanding due process. The cell door stays shut because the courts are insisting on strict legal procedure, regardless of political pressure.
It's a high-stakes tug-of-war. And just to round out the political landscape impartially, there are two other briefs we are tracking. First, Prime Minister Shah recently met with RPP Chairman Rajendra Lingden. Lingden signaled they would support the government, but only if they agree to amend the core structure of the Constitution.
which shows how fragile political coalitions remain when foundational documents are still being used as bargaining chips.
And second, we saw the cabinet quietly restore a perk, allowing members of parliament to appoint personal secretaries.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on the surface, it's a minor administrative move. But for an anti-establishment public that is highly sensitive to political privilege, quietly returning a perk like that sends a very loud signal.
It's exactly the kind of move that fuels the public frustration the Property Investigation Commission was trying to channel.
Let's shift gears to something that transcends the daily politics and actually unites the diaspora, which is sports and culture. Though the sports news unfortunately starts with a major frustration.
Yeah, the FIFA suspension of the All Nepal Football Association.
Right. ANFA failed to resolve its internal administrative feud before the July 13th deadline set by FIFA. Because the suspension wasn't lifted, Nepal's U17 women's team was officially excluded from the Asian Cup qualifiers.
It is deeply frustrating. You have a generation of teenage athletes who have trained their entire lives for a shot at international competition, and they are sidelined. Not because of their talent, but because the adults running the administration couldn't resolve their politics.
It's a heavy, heavy blow for those young athletes. But the men's cricket team is providing an incredible counter-narrative of pride right now.
Oh, absolutely. They are currently in Utrecht, competing in the ICC World Cup League 2 Tri-Series against the Netherlands and Namibia.
Right, and the performance on the pitch is exciting, but what is truly remarkable is what's happening in the stands. These European away fixtures have become massive cultural gathering points for the shifting Nepalese diaspora.
Yeah, going back to the migration data we started with, the shift to Europe, you look at the crowd in the Netherlands, and it is a sea of Nepalese flags.
The diaspora is showing up in droves.
It is the live visualization of that changing map. As the people move and establish permanent roots in these new countries, the culture, the pride, and the community travel right alongside them.
Speaking of culture and identity, back in Kathmandu, amidst the heavy monsoon rains and the tense political news, the Kala Mahotsav 2083 exhibition just opened its door.
Oh, yes.
It's a 5-day celebration of Nepalese art, nationality, and culture. It serves as a beautiful reminder of the rich heritage that you, the diaspora, carry with you wherever you go.
It really does. Whether it's art exhibitions in Kathmandu or cricket matches in Utrecht, these cultural touchstones are vital. All the economic policies and migration patterns we discuss, they are ultimately just mechanisms. The end goal is the preservation and advancement of that core identity.
So true. Now, before we wrap up today's deep dive, I have a quick note for our listeners based in the UK. Whether you are newly settling in Britain or you're an established resident looking to connect, you should definitely bookmark baliat.uk.
It's a fantastic resource.
It really is. It's a community-focused classifieds platform designed specifically for the UK Nepalese community. So if you're looking for jobs, housing, local community events, or if you want to find and support Nepalese-owned businesses in your area, it is a genuinely helpful notice board tailored just for you.
Yeah, an excellent tool for building and sustaining community networks abroad.
And to read the full newsletter that powered this deep dive, to get the latest updates, and to access even more resources tailored for you, head over to nepalidiaspora.net. We want to make sure you stay informed and connected to the homeland, no matter where you are in the world.
As we close out, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Consider how the very definition of being Nepalese is evolving at this exact moment. When your nation's economic bedrock is built by people leaving and securing permanent residency in Europe, when your domestic infrastructure relies entirely on the airspace of your neighbors, and when your proudest cultural moments are happening in cricket grounds thousands of miles away.
Right.
The future of Nepal isn't just happening within its physical geographic borders. It is being written by you, the listener, out in the world. So what does that mean for the next generation's connection to the homeland?
It's a profound question. The story of Nepal is expanding, and you are the ones writing the next chapter. Thank you for joining us on the Nepali Diaspora Network podcast. Stay curious, stay connected, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.